All right, so we're back at it here Monday morning and locking up a nice green day. That's a great way to start the week. The two stocks I traded, one of them is up 50% today. The other one is up over 100% today. So we had some nice action, which makes sense because we had some good action last week. For the most part, last week when I was giving my daily rating, we had ratings in the 4s and the 5s. A little bit slow on Tuesday, but Monday was good, and then strong on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Today, again, really strong. So when I sat down this morning, the first thing I noticed was that we had a leading gapper that was a penny stock. So it's a couple lower price stocks today that made some big moves. PALI, ON as in Nancy, M as in Mary, D. Those are two that made some big moves. ONMD is up 160% right now. But I didn't end up trading that for reasons that I'll talk about during this recap. Why don't we get onto the charts and kind of look at what I traded? All right, so the one that I made the most on was Revb. Revb currently up about 100%. This one's a pretty wild chart. If we look at the daily chart, the first thing that you'll probably notice is that it's a recent reverse split, as you can see right here. Now, one little caution on this is that it actually had high volume on these two candles prior to the split. I don't love when that happens. Sometimes I feel like that's people who are getting in prior to the split, hoping that once we have the reverse split, there'll be, a surge of volume and a big move. And then when that happens, they're already ready to sell, 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 sell. And that could explain why pre-market, it did pop up at about 5 a.m. from $10 all the way up to $23.14, but then gave it all back. So that was just like a round trip up and then right back down. Now, I didn't see it at that hour. Of course, I don't trade that early. It then squeezes up here, pulls back, pushes up to about 20. This was before 7 a.m. It was about 6:40. It sells off. And I took my first trade as it broke over VWAP right here. This was my first trade of the day. And this ended up being a pretty solid trade. So the thing that I was looking for is, look, if this thing can hold over VWAP, it's a recent reverse split. It has a lot of room on the daily. Really no nearby resistance, 200 moving average, way up high. This one could be a big mover. So that was my first trade. We ended up getting a move all the way up to $20 a share, which is pretty nice from VWAP, about $4 a share off of VWAP, but ended up pulling back down, kind of selling off. And I kind of thought, well, maybe that's it. So it ends up squeezing up again to 20. It drops back down. And at this point, I was like, well, we definitely have a double top here at about $20 a share, a little over that. And I said, we also kind of have some descending resistance from here to sort of about here. We were below it and then we got back above it. So a couple technical levels. At the open, we halted down. Then we halted up. Then we halted down. And then it popped up and down and up and down. It was halting like crazy. And the problem with this one, it's continued to be a problem, is that the spreads are pretty big. Revb, I'll pull up the level 2 on it. So you can, if you look at the level 2 on this right now, and I'll put up my camera here, you'll see that the spreads are fairly big, 25, 30 cent spreads. We've seen spreads over $1 a share at some points today. That's hard to trade. So pre-market, I locked up about $1,500 of profit on Revb, trading with relatively small size. At the open, no trades in this area. I was like, nope, I'm not feeling it. But when it pulled away right here, I bought right on there on that pullback. We got squeezed into a halt. We opened higher, a push all the way up to $25.26. It sells off. But nonetheless, there were some nice trades there. And I actually got a nice dip trade. Where was it? Actually, I think it was like right down in this area. It did a fall. It opened. It did a false halt down. And then it popped back up. And then it came down. So let's see. Total profit, $2,800 on Revb. This was not a stock that I could have taken 10, 20,000 shares of for quick trades. There just was not the liquidity. I couldn't get in. I couldn't get out. So I traded with smaller size, 1,000 share blocks. Even at the end, only 250 share blocks. At the end, one of my last trades on it, let's see. On one of my last trades, I think it was right in this area. I took a trade somewhere in here, and it popped up. Actually, it might have been. It was right here for the break at 19. I got in at 19. I added 1,000 shares, and all of a sudden the bid is showing 1805, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose $1,000 on this trade in about 1 second. And it pops up to 1965. I took it off the table, locking up $500. And that is what pushed me from up 1,500 on the day to up 2,000 on the day. That was before this trade. And at that point, I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. I do not want to go red on the day. So from that point forward, I reduced my share size to 500 and 250 share blocks to trade this move higher. And I made some money with 250 shares, 500 shares. I still made $800, which is great. And I did it with less risk. And it's kind of a shame because when you have something that goes up $4 or $5 a share, you think, boy, if I had taken 10,000 shares of that, I could have really made a lot. But that's an illusion, because in reality, getting filled that kind of size would have been very difficult and would have required me to take a level of risk that I just wasn't comfortable taking. So all in all, on this one today, I feel good about all these trades. This trade right in here, we got this little pullback and then another one right here. I added a little too heavily on this. I was adding as it was moving higher. Every 50 cents, I was adding more size. And my highest add was actually at $20 a share. So I literally added like 5 cents off the high. But I was looking at this and I just thought, I think it's going to punch through here up to 21.18. And then, maybe we're looking at a retest of the pre-market high. So that was a mistake, and I ended up giving back some profit as it came back down. Fortunately, I still locked up $1,500 on it, but that was probably my highest risk trade because I traded it kind of so aggressively, but the volume was picking up, which was good. The spreads were still pretty big. So that was probably my highest risk trade. And, in terms of was this the right stock to be trading at that moment, the answer is yes. Second leading gapper within my price range, it all made sense. Now, this wasn't a great one for the small account challenge because it's a little too expensive and the risk was kind of just too high. But for the big account, totally fine. No trades in here. I think that was a good decision. Taking this trade as it broke out of this range, I could have maybe tried to buy off ascending support, but the problem was there wasn't any real indicator for me that it was going to go. And with these big spreads, I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I just waited for volume to come in, which is as it broke over this level, and took that micro pullback. But then that was a close call trade. So after that, I was like, all right, I got to reduce my size a bit. And then with smaller size, I feel good about all those trades. Okay, so that was Revb. Pretty decent trades. A couple of losers in there, but they were with small size and not that bad. So we also had PALI moving up today, which was also one for consideration for the small account. No leverage on it, but cheap enough that I could buy some size. But I didn't think I'd be able to get a 15, 20 cent move. Well, in fact, I probably could have. But what's interesting on this is that you had a huge move here from 60 cents to $1.20. And then from this point forward, a lot of volume came in and it just became thickly traded. It's just very thickly traded. So if we look at the level 2 on this one, you'll see it's very stacked up, right? Very stacked on the bid, stacked on the offer. So very thickly traded, not a big mover. Now, Rvsn is up 50%, 49% right now. And I traded this one as well. I hesitated to trade it because I didn't feel like it perfectly met my criteria for being something I should even consider. And the big reason was relative volume and lack of news. So this is a bit more of a continuation setup. These can work. It was moving higher on the daily, but notice the volume on the daily. Lighter volume, declining volume. There's no news catalyst. So it's going higher, and the trade here is kind of that people who are maybe swing trading it to the short side are going to have to start covering, and maybe there's someone that has decided to accumulate like a 200,000-300,000 share short position and is going to get forced to cover. And when that happens, you can get some explosive moves. But, there's speculation because there's no way to know if someone's accumulated that big of a short position. There weren't any real signs of that happening. So for me, when I'm thinking about whether or not a stock is worth trading, I'm thinking about, of course, the price. Right now for the small account, I'm really preferring between 5 and sort of $8 a share. But generally speaking, for my big account, anywhere from 2 to 20 is okay. So the price is fine. I like to see the gain is at least 10%, but I also like to see it's one of the top 3. So this was not one of the top 3 when it started moving. I like to see the relative volume is at least 5, right? So it should be 5 times. And this one, as it started moving, was much, much lower than that. News, I would like to see if there is news. This one had no news. The float, well, the float's fine. I like to see a float of under 20 million shares. And this one does have a relatively low float of 1.29 million shares. But the lack of relative volume, the lack of news, the fact that it was not a top 3, gainer coming into the day, I was concerned it wasn't going to be obvious enough. But it did start to pull away. So the place that I decided to start trading it was actually right here. What I kind of looked at this moment was squeezing up, pull back, moving higher, pulling back, and starting to reverse. And if we look at the 5-minute chart, it had a red candle on the 5-minute. So I was like, this looks, I was like, this looks like a reversal right here. I was like, I think this is the top, and it's going to reverse back down. So when it came back up right here through 1350, I was like, okay, that's bucking the trend of what I expected would happen. I think I should consider this here for a long. So I bought with relatively small size. I got in as it broke over 1350 for the move to 14. I added at 14. And actually what I did on this one, because the spreads were also a little on the bigger side, we can look at them here for a second, Rvsn. So you see, again, like a 14-cent spread, 11-cent spread. It's kind of big. It's got 17 million shares of volume right now, but that's still the spread. The spread this morning was even bigger. So with these bigger spreads, I don't know. I felt kind of nervous. So this is what I ended up doing. I was like, well, I'm buying on the offer because it's pulling away. And if I put an order on the bid, I'm just not going to get filled. So I was like, I'm going to buy on the offer. But as soon as I'm up 15, 20 cents a share, I'm just going to take some off the table on the offer. So I'm going to buy at the ask and I'm going to sell at the ask. I'm going to post my order to the offer. And I did. But then as it broke 14, I'm out at like 13.99 because there was a little bit of resistance here at 14. Then it comes back up and punches through. And I was like, oh gosh, darn it, I sold too soon. So then I added back like 500 shares. I was like, well, I'm going to go smaller on the add back. Goes to 14.50. I take a little profit. And then it pulls back. And then, so as it turns out, I would have done better just holding for this whole move. But this was a relatively high entry considering we had just dropped down here to like 12.50. So, and given the spreads, I just felt like I was at a point in the day. This was, 9.50. So I think at that point I was up. Let's see. Had I taken, now I can't remember if I'd taken the trades on Revb yet. So let's look at that trade on Revb. I think maybe I had, but yeah, this was at 10:30. So I was already up, so I don't know. I was up in pretty good shape on the day, just because of the first trade, but I hadn't taken this one yet. So I was at about 1,500 on the day. All right. So I was at 1,500 on the day when Rvsn came along. And yeah, I just was like, well, let's just add some profit without screwing it up. There's a nasty rejection candle right there. Nothing too bad as it came up in this area, but I just focused on trading in this range. Couple scalps, got in, took some profit. The reason I couldn't just hold for the whole move is I felt that if I just set my, got in and said, I'm not going to sell until I see an exit indicator, that would mean I'm selling on the bid, which means I'm definitely going to lose at least 15 to 20 cents because of the spread. And, by the time you see the exit indicator, it's usually already starting to drop a little bit. So then I'm going to lose like another 15, 20 cents. So I was like, I'm going to be like 40 cents off of what I could have sold at if I had sold on the ask when it had strength. So as it had strength, I was selling on the ask, selling on the ask, selling on the ask. And then the final couple hundred shares or whatever it was, I sold on the bid coming back down, which didn't matter. But if I'd held the whole position until I saw an exit indicator, something like this, well, look at how much this candle dropped. I mean, this was like 1.5 points in 1 minute. That's really fast. So, I could have gotten best exit 1566 and then it drops down to 1420s, right? So in hindsight, selling into strength, selling a little more, selling a little more, selling a little more, I think was the right move. Kind of bounced up here, drops down, comes back up higher. So it was a little tricky. And, so anyways, and then ONMD, this one this morning was a penny stock that made a really nice move early. It made a huge move, but we look at this chart and it's like, holy smokes. This thing went from 60 cents, pulled back, goes up to $2. This is at like 5 in the morning. And then it sells off all the way back down to $1 a share. Now it's come back up to $1.45, but it wasn't clean at the open. Pre-market, it was like it had given back way too much of the move, so it wasn't interesting. PALI, it squeezed higher. It's a big percentage mover. It's got 111 million shares of volume. So it's our volume leader today. Actually, Sophie's the volume leader. But Sophie, I wouldn't trade this one. The float's 932 million shares. And that really is a deal breaker for me. I just don't trade stocks with floats that high. Although you could have bought, walked away, set a stop, and come back. Trying to take breakouts or do scalp trades on stocks of this float is going to be very difficult. So left that alone. Anyways, so that was actually the leading gapper, but PALI was second behind at 111 million shares, which is a lot. Revb, only 4 million shares of volume. Rvsn, 17 million, and then some lighter volume stocks down here. My feeling this morning, it's kind of the same as on Friday. So, on Friday, once I left, I didn't come back. So I didn't see what Crbp did the rest of the day. I was like, nope, I'm going to take the rest of the day. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to stress. But then this morning I looked at Crbp and I saw that it had made this big move on Friday, after I left. I think when I was doing my recap, it is when it was hitting the high of like 27, 28, but then it ended up going even higher. So let's look at this chart for a second. So this was the thing. This ends up making, obviously a really nice move. It goes up to like $40 a share, which is impressive. And it would be easy for me to have looked at this on Friday afternoon or even this morning and been filled with regret and FOMO and frustration. I can't believe it. You really screwed this up. So I was like, well, I'm going to stand behind the decision I made to walk away. I walked away because I knew that losing money would hurt about 10 times more than making money would feel good, because I'd already made enough. I felt like I'd made enough for the week. I'd made enough for the day, and I just didn't want to push it and risk having a big loss, and then which could happen on a stock of this price range with those types of spreads, and then go into the weekend feeling disappointed and frustrated, which then carries over to Monday morning. So I was like, I need to preserve kind of my emotional state right now. I've done well enough. I'm just going to lock it up, not look back. So I stand behind that decision. However, if I'd had a bigger cushion, maybe on the day, things would have been different perhaps, but that doesn't matter. The decision was fine, but now let's just look at the chart from the pure curiosity perspective of how could I have traded it if I had stayed around. So the thing on this is I did trade it early and, I made some money on it, but it did have big spreads. This was again an issue of a stock with really big spreads. So if you recall, I was still here when it squeezed and halted up, but I didn't want to chase that halt at 22 because it had just bounced from 18. I was like, that's way too risky. I can't trust that. So I was like, no, I'm not going to trust that one. So then it resumes, it dips, and then it squeezes up and halts again. And it happened really fast. I watched that too, didn't trade it. I was like, nope, can't risk it. Then it squeezes higher here, hits a high of 27, just about. And then it drops all the way to 22.58 and did a false halt. From that level, it bounced all the way back up to this new high. I sort of was tempted on the false halt for an entry, and I passed on it because I thought, just wasn't totally sure. I couldn't tell if it was going to really halt or false halt. And so I just passed. So I missed that one, but that's okay. All right, so about this time is when I walked away. I see it did a little rejection right here. It sort of tried to curl up and then got slammed back down. It ends up pulling back here. And then where does it base out? So it doesn't even come all the way back down to volume weight average price, but it bases out at about 25. Sort of a triple bottom here at that level. Okay, so that's noteworthy, 25, but I wouldn't have bought down here because there's no real reason to think it's going to curl back up versus just break and go lower. But then in this area here, we do start to kind of find some ascending support coming back up. And it's interesting how it breaks below it here and then comes right through it, which is almost like a little bit of a bear trap. A little bit of a topping tail here, here, and here. But I think it's also safe to draw a trend line at about the whole dollar here of 25. So, and the high here of this candle, gosh, the high of that candle, oh, sorry, that was 29, not 25, $30 a share. The high of this candle was 30.70. So the levels I would have been watching is, all right, if this can break over 30, it needs to break then through 30.70, the high of this candle, and then it definitely needs to break through this candle here of 31.78. And if it can do that, then over 32, we've got a pretty clear shot back through high a day. And you pretty much got that in 3 candles. And then it opened higher, halted, opened higher, pushed a little higher, and then had a strong pullback. And it did give you some nice dips here. Not exactly off of this blue ascending support line, but kind of one that's in the same channel, just a little bit higher. I'm not sure if that connects somewhere else. Sometimes when I see something like that, I'll just try to draw, pull back, and just see, was there something I missed? See the way it touches down here? Now, I don't know if anyone was really drawing it like that, but it is interesting. You know, the thing is, slight changes in how you connect it makes a huge difference as it goes back up, as you can see right there. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if anyone drew it just like that, but maybe some people were watching that level. I don't know. In any case, you had some ascending support there. It comes down, it breaks it, and sells off. So realistically on this one, yes, you definitely had a clean breakout right here, but it would have been a little risky because it would have been buying the highs and hoping it doesn't do another, you know, kind of rejection like it did there and there. And in this area, some nice dips, but not huge resolution, and given bigger spreads, probably a little tricky. But in any case, we got some good action on it on Friday, which is good to see. And I thought maybe Monday we would have a little bit of a bounce. I used to really like this setup, second day continuation, but I haven't traded that setup in quite a while. Revb ended up for me today being the best stock to trade. So the price was a little higher, the float super low, relative volume super high. This one had the risk where there wasn't news. I was concerned about that. I didn't see clear news on it. It is a recent reverse split though, and it was moving, so I jumped on the momentum, but I was a little concerned about the no news risk. Rvsn had the same risk, no news. It has only a relative volume of 1.98, so you know it's kind of low, but there were some opportunities. In any case, $3,787.78 is a lot of 7s and 8s in the P&L today. That's pretty good. I really can't complain. That's a fine way to start the week, especially considering there wasn't anything that was incredibly awesome. You know, it was just kind of a decent day, a solid day, but nothing special, and was able to lock up just under $4,000 of profit. So that gives me a good start to the week. We are coming, you know, all things considered here to the end of the month. So one of the things I said last week to members at Warrior is that I actually don't know where I'm sitting at on the month. I could guess, but I don't know where I'm at because I chose not to look. The reason I chose not to look is because the beginning of the year can be a stressful time. You know, we're basically all starting the year in the same spot. We're starting at zero, right? Now, I suppose some of you might be carrying trades from last year, so that's possible. But for those of us that are very disciplined about not holding overnight and we're just day trading, we all start the year in the same exact spot. And, you know, there's a bit of pressure of feeling like, okay, I need to, my identity is like, who am I? I'm a day trader. So certainly I feel that I need to make a certain amount of money to maintain this, like that's what I do. That's who I am. And so each year at the beginning of the year, it's a little stressful because it's like, until I've hit my first $50,000, the first $100,000, I just feel a little antsy. Like, I'm just like, okay, can I just get this first, you know, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 kind of put away, And then I feel like, I've done a good job for the whole year, right? Like once I've crossed over 6 figures on the year, I'm pretty content. And anything more than that is awesome. But if it's not a huge, huge year, that's also okay. Like I get it. So the thing that's happened to me in the past is that, at the beginning of the year, I'm swinging hard because that feeling of wanting to feel kind of like I've locked up and secured that first 100K can drive me, because it's a feeling, it's emotion. I want to feel secure. And so the best way for me to get that feeling of security is to make $100,000 really quickly. But while that would alleviate that emotion, the drive is so strong, it can lead me to desperation. It can lead me to being way too aggressive. And that can cause snowball effect. And that has happened before to me in January. So although January typically is a good month of the year, it's also been a month where I've gone red early on, and then I've spent the rest of the month trying to recoup the losses. So this year I kind of said, you know what? I don't want to look at my P&L on a sort of, I'll look at it on a daily basis, but I'm not tracking it. I'm not going to obsess over it or look at where I'm at on the month. Because as soon as I start doing that, I'm up 18,000 or 15 or whatever it is. And then I have a red day, 5,000. Then I'm like, oh, geez, I just went from up 15 to up 10. And then I have another red day and now I'm up only 7. And all of a sudden you start doing all the numbers and it creates this additional pressure. So for me right now, trading from a place of, kind of just focused on the individual day and not thinking about the big picture is helpful. Keeping my head down, locking up some base hits like I am today. And I know 10 days like this is $37,000, right? I mean, I understand that. So if I can just keep doing this, for a few more weeks, just keep my head down, then I think I'm going to find myself in a pretty nice place, going into February and going into March. But it's the beginning of the year, so it's still time to kind of build that cushion. Now, some people don't think about it like this. They just, I don't know, they just are like, well, I've made enough money in my career, so I can be totally disconnected from that pressure. It doesn't matter. But that's not me. I think for me, because I've always really traded as like, I need to make this amount of money each month. This is how much I need to make each year. That's how I started trading. So it's ingrained in me. For people that started trading more as like totally like the profit is great, but it doesn't matter for them, I think are able to have a freer relationship with profits and losses. But for me, it's been from the beginning very, very tense, that relationship. So anyways, so that's where I'm at right now on the day. Don't know where I'm at on the week, but I'm going to keep grinding along and keep doing these recaps for you guys as always. Reminder, trading is risky and my results are not typical. So manage your risk, take it slow, practice in a simulator before you put real money on the line. If you haven't already checked out my small account challenge, make sure you check out the episodes in that series. There'll be another one coming soon.